today. I'm very excited to bring up our first panel, which is really focused on leading cities and Tier 1 cities that have done the work to think through regulation, how to think through parking tidiness, how to think about safety, how to think through app integration, and learn from their challenges as they've kind of iterated regulatory design and gotten to the place that they're at today. We will be speaking with folks from Brussels, Oslo, and London. And leading the conversation will be Lars, Grødem-Olsen, who helped shape Oslo's own regulations and has supported both public authorities and operators through his firm, Movability. He's the managing director. He previously led Tier's expansion in Norway and has helped multiple operators win tenders in Europe, and he'll now guide us through the discussion. Thank you, Lars. Take it away.
Great to meet you. Great to be here. So the people that we're going to have on stage, they do not have an easy task. So because regulating is hard, you have to not just find out how to enable shared micromobility, but also balance the needs of various stakeholders, different kinds of commercial interests. And even if you get to a good regulation, it still has its flaws. And that's why we're incredibly lucky to have this panel of smart people here today. So I want you to help me in welcoming Jonas from the city of Oslo, Teddy from Transport for London, and Martin from city of Brussels. So before we get started, I just wanted to give a quick introduction to people that may not know regulations and tenders, just to give a bit of a 101. So we need to regulate mobility, because if we don't, we end up running into each other. It's kind of, we need to regulate traffic, we need to regulate space, we need to find out where people want to travel and create good boundaries so that we can coexist. But these can have unintended consequences and imperfections. And basically how they get started is they are initiated by either bureaucrats or politicians. But mostly they're done by this clever lot here. They are the ones the politicians are the ones that you see giving the opinions and voicing a lot of these guys' recommendations. So that's why we're really lucky to have them here. And just to give a bit of context on what is a tender and why do we need it. So tenders are one of the best ways that we have to create a fair competition of procuring a good or a service for public sector. And for markets like with shared e-scooters or dockless e-bikes, where you have a finite amount of space that you can only give to a certain set of operators, it's a great way of saying, hey, we can only have space to 3 players, basically. So it gives a chance for our bidders to show what do we have in our operations, our technology, and so forth in writing. And it's not perfect. But yeah, basically, operators spend anything from just a few man-hours to several hundred thousands of euros in trying to win these guys' attention. So smart operators, I think you guys should be taking notes today. But yeah, let's kick this off and get started and hear the golds. But I first want to hear, like, how do you guys view shared micromobility? Is it something that you want in your cities?
Well, there's a lot of different point of views, of course. In our sustainable urban mobility plan for basically what we want to see as an evolution of the transport system in Brussels, we have a sum that has been validated by the government as well, and very clear goals for 2030. And inside, like shared mobility in general, and micromobility is of course part of it, but shared mobility has to have a big place. Like it's written very clearly in that sump. So yes, we see shared micromobility as a very important part of this transport system, and we see in terms of usage in the past few months, like it's still growing very, very much, and it takes a lot of place. Like it's really a service that citizens rely on. So yeah, as a public service, we do want to have shared micromobility as an offer in Brussels.
What about you, other lot?
Yeah, I think it's important to think new about how we move around in the city, and shared mobility is part of that new way of thinking, and we see that on how it's being used, and it really contributes to the freedom of people. So yeah, I think it's a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, taking it away from policy and looking at it on a personal way for a second, it's amazing what it does. It connects communities, it connects people, it gets you to work, it gets you to see your friends, it gets you home of an evening. It does so much, and it can integrate with different modes, which is just something that we haven't really had for a long time in transport. And now we're seeing sort of new modes coming through. How do we connect this with other areas as well, tubes, trams, and I'm autistic, so I struggle with getting on trains and buses and things like that. I just don't like lots of people in one room, but this is okay, just to be clear. But I got on a bike this morning and I cycled from the south of Brussels all the way up here. I went the wrong way every single turn, but it was great. I got to experience the city, fresh air, wonderful, love it.
Cool. So, I mean, we want this, but I mean, every operator here knows that to be able to have like a shared service, it has to be profitable. So how do you, and as I said initially, there's a lot of other interests. You have stakeholder groups like the visually impaired, the physically disabled, and commercial interests. Like how do you weigh, how do you make sure that the scheme is both profitable and that these interests are kept?
I'll go this. Yeah, I think what's really important is that base communication with the operators as well. I mean, in London recently, we've done a few things like removing a lot of geofences. Initially, we had loads in place, which is great because geofences are this tool that stop every problem, right? But now we've realised actually they create more. You have a lot more near misses. So by doing these small things and working with operators, we reduce time and cost for them. It might only be small, but the more we do, the better the outcome. We've also worked, a lot with like meetings. We used to have a weekly meeting on incidents that had happened throughout the week. We've reduced that to a month. It does reduce costs for our operators. It might only be small, but it's having that communication on what is taking time for them, what's causing them a lot of challenges. How do they have that space to deal with what we're asking for, and being able to say, well, do you know what? We're still going to be just as safe and just as effective if we reduce this a bit, and then we put that energy into something else, which we can then increase the service for the user. So I think it's really important that base communication is really key with the operators. And we're very fortunate in London. We have a lot of two-way conversations. We do our best to listen, and we do our best to talk as well.
Yeah.
I hope.
So what you're saying is that basically reducing unnecessary bureaucracy and geofencing that you saw that didn't have an effect like for the other interests enabled some things. Like you've been an operator yourself. Like, can you describe like, because I think we can all understand what you're saying, but I think it's good to understand that these things don't really have an impact necessarily on the stakeholder groups, and but they do have a very positive impact on the operator. Can you say anything about that?
Do you mean about geofences as a
basically the users hate them?
Yeah, I mean it's really difficult, right? If I get on a map in London, I look at a bike geofence map or an e-scooter geofence map. They're completely different. So you can look at cities around the globe. One not far from here who under-regulated massively, and it got to a point where they couldn't pull it back, right? And this is so easy to do. In London, we've gone the other way. I'd say we've over-regulated and we're pulling it back. So I've got data to say, actually, these geofences are causing more incidents than they are saving and reducing. So why do we have them? We have a lot of other challenging factors in London. We have a red route and a normal borough route, so it depends who owns that road on who can have the geofences. Loads of private areas where you've got to argue through all of this, and I've been arguing with parks discussing with parks for like well over a year on why do we need this when you don't have it for bikes. So, but those geofences, they're not the golden egg that we've all sold or been sold. They don't stop the second you hit them. You know, the reality is they're really good. They're so effective for so many reasons, but having them just blocking a building off is pointless. It doesn't do anything for us as a city. So let's be smart on how we address that.
Yeah. And just let's stay on geofencing for just a couple more minutes. Jonas, when you're scoring the Oslo tender, and I assume you get a lot of bids where at least certain operators put a lot of geofencing in there, and they're not necessarily able to say why they're like. Or let me rephrase this: do you always give a better score if there are more geofencing zones, if they're not like explained well, or that you don't believe they have a positive impact?
No, not really. We look at the bigger picture and how they can contribute to safe and orderly public spaces, and that's what we score the highest. How they operates rather than the technology itself. So yeah, it's more about the way they manage to answer and contribute to orderly public spaces.
Cool.
Really.
Martin, you mentioned a bit, or do you want to say anything about the geofencing?
Yeah, I think it's very depending on what kind of geofencing you actually do. We've noticed that speed limitation, for example, work really well. I think we've cracked it. It's not an issue anymore. For example, I don't know if you've had the chance to see the city center and pedestrian zone, where you used to have a lot of conflicts between pedestrians and shared micromobility users. We've started a speed limitation geofencing zone in the city center. I think it was 2 years ago, something like that. It's not an issue anymore, like at all. So these type of geofencing.
What do you mean that it's not an issue anymore? Is it that there are no more scooters there, or is it that there are no more?
There are no more complaints.
Yeah,
like people are not complaining about it. But the scooters can actually go through the city center. But I think as a user, you'd rather go around to reach the maximum.
And just to kind of drill deep in that, you don't experience that. I mean, let's just bust the myth straight away that the GPS accuracy is not 1 centimeter, as some operators may claim at certain times. But one of the key things which can be challenging with the slow zone is that people may kind of be tangent to the slow zone when they're on for example, a carway or in a bike lane. You've kind of avoided that when you've created slow zones?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So we focus on pedestrian areas or parks, for example, where it's just really leisure kind of walking. And we understood that you shouldn't create geofencing zones that are really narrow, like a street. It doesn't work because people crossing the street you have a weird experience that might be dangerous as well. We really focus on areas like global districts of the city, and that works quite good. Yeah.
Very good. Like basically using it more as a hammer than a scalpel. That's how I like this.
Okay, good.
But you also had some challenges with the illegal aspects of your tender. Do you want to say a bit about that?
Absolutely, yeah. So I think we have a particularity here in Brussels, as we are both a city and a region at the same time. And I haven't seen or known any other example, so please correct me if I'm wrong. But so as a region, we like the process of regulation making, policy making is really a law-making process with a lot of democratic process and stages, etc., involving a lot of different stakeholders. So, for example, the regulation on shared micromobility integrates many other aspects and stakes basically than transport and just transport, because you have all these different point of views. So we integrated criteria for social aspects, environmental aspects, economic aspects, etc., with a lot of criteria. And the competition, and in the tendering process, the competition between the different operators, we really put them in competition on a lot of different criteria, and we had those legal challenges once the decision had been made and the ranking was published. And it's been going on for close to 2 years now, or a year and a half minimum. And there's been the legal challenges are still ongoing. And that's something that's really tricky. We always talk about building trust between public and private sector. I completely agree with that, and we have some work to do. But it's tricky to say that and trying to build trust with the local and public authorities while there's still so many legal challenges.
Yeah.
And we have a bad momentum in these legal challenges. Now it's a bit more positive. So I think there are the regulatory framework was not that badly designed, even though it can be better. And actually we're going to start a third iteration of regulatory framework revision pretty soon.
Cool. And why is regulation so slow?
Well, as I said, here specifically, there's a lot of stages. Like for a lawmaking process, you have to have 3 approval by the government, by the local government, and at each stage you have different consultation of the stakeholders. So that takes a lot of time. But it's designed that way so that we make sure that when we publish, it's the best possible, and then integrates most of the point of views and the stakeholders' position. We are slow, and I think we can do a lot to have a better and more efficient governance and from the public sector. But there's some added value in being designed that way. It was designed that way because we have, we are working for the citizens, and some stability is actually valuable for the citizens.
For sure. So it's basically about democracy.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And democracy is a bit frustrating for you guys. How do you guys get energy in the midst of dealing with the slowness of democracy? Red Bull energy drink? No, sorry.
Yeah, no.
Well, it's we're also part of it. Like we live in the city ourselves, and it's for everyone. Basically, so that gives motivation, I think.
And I mean, you, Jonas, you got a chance to now be a part of changing, or at least, because you started a bit later than, but in Oslo, you guys have now deregulated to a certain extent, allowing more vehicles in the outer regions, in the outskirts. Why did you do that?
First of all, we want shared mobility to be for everyone in Oslo, and not only those living in the city center. And I think that was important for the politicians as well, that this is something, and especially in areas where the public transportation service is not that good as in the city center. So by doubling from 8,000 to 16,000 in total in Oslo, we saw that especially some specific areas in the north east being like we expected it to be a high use, but we didn't expect it to be that high as we're seeing now, and we see that the destinations are to public transportation. So someone thought that they're going to end up in a city center from the outer city. That's less than 10% that we're seeing that does that.
And do you guys, Brussels, London, you have more total caps? Do you have? What do you think about like the Oslo model of regulating a cap of a certain area where there's more issues?
We've in our contracts, we actually got it the other way around. So we have something called a minimum vehicle requirement, where each of the boroughs can say, hey, we want a minimum of 100 scooters or 10 scooters or 50. It's not actually used that often, but that's one of the things that we have there. We don't have a general cap. So we don't have a... We have a total cap across London. They're not borough specific, but it is restricted by the number of parking spaces available. So if there's only 100 parking spaces available and there's 250 scooters in there, we know there's a problem and we can see that and it flags. So we can deal with that in a more, I suppose, human way by having those conversations of, hey, we need to get these scooters down. And having multiple operators, it makes it challenging because each operator doesn't know where the other operators' scooters are, so that there are challenges with that. I think it's a really good idea to have sort of specific area caps on max vehicles, but for us, I think one of the challenges we have, until we have an integrated system where we know how many scooters each operator can put in one area, it makes it very, very challenging to then turn around and say, hey, do you know what? Operator 1, you've got way too many vehicles in there. Operator 2 can't get in, when they've been sitting there waiting at the door for the last 3 days to put scooters in the most popular borough. So we need to have better ways of managing that. We are working on solutions all the time for this sort of thing. And my work is data, basically, ultimately, is what I do. We have data-led solutions, but they're not easy to implement straight away. So I think it would be good for me to have a chat offline with you and learn some more about it from Oslo, because we've got smaller boroughs, though. They're not quite as big as the rings, aren't they called in Oslo? Is that what they're called? Yeah.
And just to kind of build on that, for Oslo, can you say a bit about, because you actually, there are city officers out in the streets that are fining or giving fines to misparked scooters. So basically, they're you can explain. I will.
Yeah, so our traffic officers, they do the same as they do with cars. When they see a badly parked e-scooter, it'll get a fine with the same price tag as a car would get, which is around 80 euros, more or less. And that is forwarded to the operator, which then again forwarded to the user.
Have you seen an effect from this?
Yeah, it has. We see that since we started with it, users are getting more. They mind more where they park in a better way. Like if you get a fine one time, you change your behavior, and yeah, so we've seen that change.
And operators are putting this into their tenders as well. I think it is safe to say.
Yeah, how
from the scoring matrix.
Yeah, definitely. So that's something we look at, and how they deal with these fines and how they educate their users. Definitely.
I'm just kidding. Okay, cool. Martin, you've in Brussels, you've actually tendered different kinds of modes. So e-scooters, e-bikes, cargo bikes.
And mopeds.
And mopeds even.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
For simultaneous tendering processes, which are quite heavy. We had a lot of applications, which is also a very good sign. I mean, it means how interesting and attractive a market Brussels is, and like there's a really good potential. So we had 27 applications, and 19 of them, or 15 of them rather, were about scooters, and there were only 3 licenses deliverable or 2 actually for scooters, 3 for bikes, and etc. etc. I just wanted to add something about how future-proof we try to be in our process making and legally to answer a previous question that you had.
Yeah.
So there was 2 licenses, for example, for scooters, but in the decree on the basis of which we organize the tendering process and the competition, we try to be as future-proof as possible. And for example, for every iteration of the tendering process, we can choose between 0 to 5 licenses, for example, to account for growth of demand, for example, for these type of transport solutions. So next time we organize this tendering process, if there's a lot of more demand, we can decide to distribute 3 or 4 licenses for that many thousands of.
What does that mean for if I'm an operator and I want to apply for your city? What does that mean for me?
Well, there's no tendering process happening now. The business is closed for the moment, but next time there will be a tendering process. The licenses have a duration of 3 years. So that will be by the end of next year. Again, there's legal challenges happening, so we're going to see where it goes. But if all goes as planned, by the end of 2026, there's another tendering process that will happen, will take place. And by then, we can decide to change a little bit the size of fleet sizes, for example, fleet caps, or the amount, the number of licenses that are there for grab.
So more operators, or just generally more vehicles? And
It can be both.
Okay.
And it can be less as well, depending,
Okay.
depending on where it goes.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool. Good. And I mean, Teddy, now that you've learned by deregulating, will that change? Do you think that will change how you score a tender in the future?
It's a really difficult one to answer. I think we've learned an awful lot, but it's still such a young transport mode. You know, if you want car data or bike data, you can look back 10, 20, 30, 50, 100 years and you can get data. You know, we're still looking at how much weather impacts micromobility. You know, we've only got X amount of years of data. So I think we're constantly trying to evolve with how we're looking at this data set and how we're looking at each different part of the sort of agreement that we have with operators, how that affects, how it affects the operators being able to sustainably work within a city and be able to innovate and do things differently within a framework that we have. You know, we need to set that framework that's effective and allows the operators to say, hey, I've got a really good idea. This will attract more riders. This will allow us to, have a better system. So it's really difficult. And I think, like with all of us, if we wrote one today, it will be completely different to what we write in a year's time, 2 years' time, and definitely 5 years' time. So I think we've learnt a lot, but there's still a lot more for us to learn in the micromobility space.
And I mean, I guess your goal is to also cover more of London with shared micromobility.
Yeah. I mean that's my personal goal. I think it'd be great, right? But even as TfL, we'd love to have more boroughs involved in the trial. We've actually recently just expanded into another borough, Wandsworth, which is great, and we've seen usage there. We've had expansions of other boroughs in the last year. We'd like to see more people being able to use this mode of transport, and that's what it's about. It's about giving options to residents and options to people who come to London or any other city, being able to go, hey, I can get my phone out and I can get from A to B, and that's what I think it's really about. As I've been here riding around and cycling around, but it's great. You need to have that option to be able to get your phone out, log on, click on, update my payment method because it was about 2 years old, and then start again. That's what it's all about, being able to get around. So I'd love to see the whole of London covered with micromobility safely.
Just a quick question. One of the things I loved about Oslo is that the increased cap in the outer regions makes people actually compete for covering these low-density areas where more car rides are replaced. Can we think of, are there any more kind of incentives that we could put in place to kind of boost vehicles in these areas? Is it mainly the cap, or are there other elements to put in?
I mean, for the operator or for us as a city?
It's now I'm asking you guys, so...
Yeah, I think it's important to have dedicated spots of parking, even in the outer city, and that applies for every mode of transportation, really. I think helping people see where they can park is something which is important, and also helps the operator wanting to be out where it's adapted for this.
Cool. And sorry?
Yeah,
Go ahead.
I was going to answer the question as well. So in Brussels, we have a region that is 100% urban. So there's people living like everywhere. And in the design process of the regulations, coverage, like global coverage of the whole city and region was a mandate. So we enforced it, but we balanced that with guidelines for drop zones, how to design them, how to create them, how to make a grid and a network of these drop zones to ensure that there's a coverage all over the city and accessibility for everyone. That was really important stake in the discussions, like in the stakeholder consultation. So that's how we covered the whole city with the service. So you can access scooters or bikes all over the city.
So basically, just adding more areas where people can park safely, and they know that it's accepted to park there and mandated. So, and just talking about the user, like, are you guys out there trying the service yourself and comparing and?
I use like more bikes. I used to ride scooters, but I'm not that young anymore, so I'm riding bikes now. Yeah, definitely, it's really helpful. I mean, in the freedom of choice, it's so important. I had to wait like 10 minutes for a tram this morning. I decided to take a bike instead because I wanted to go quicker and reach the metro station. So yeah, it's really, really helpful, and it gives you freedom and of choice. And actually, I was not on time specifically, so it helped me get here on time.
And you had a post recently about the strike that was here.
Yeah.
Do you want to say a bit about that? I know that you guys can't say too much positive about what competing modes does during a strike, but you had some good things to say there.
I mean, the post was not meant to be political. It's not at all. I mean, there are reasons why there are strikes, and I'm not,
no.
I'm being careful about what I say. But it's an interesting stress test on the transport system in Brussels, because there was less public transport available for the citizens, and you can see what kind of other mode of transport they choose. So we had records broken in terms of active mobility, like the counters for bike path, a historic record, as well as shared modes being used. Like we had, I don't know, something like 85,000 trips made that day with shared modes, which is, and most of it was shared micromobility, but it gives you an idea, and that's close to 8-9% of what public transport would have done that day. So it's not anecdotal anymore. It's really part of the transport system and something that citizens rely on. And I think it's really important for policymakers and decision makers to realize how big of a phenomenon it actually is.
Yeah.
It's not, it's as you said, it's really recent. It's only 7 or 8 years that we have these modes available for citizens, but it's really part of the day-to-day life. Most people. There are non-users as well, of course, but
cool.
Yeah.
Just about, since we're talking about public transport, I mean, many of you probably know that we have a bit more time, Evan, or I saw you with a hand. Okay, 3 minutes, good one. Okay, then we have one more topic. So yeah, many of you know that, like, about the whole concept of mobility as a service that basically morphed into this combo of combining different modes at a stop, and as well as like putting different modes in a transit app. But what I find is really interesting now is what you guys did in Oslo now with putting mobility into the tender. And I would love to hear your perspectives on that too. But maybe you can just explain a bit what you did and why.
Yeah, I mean, we see micromobility as an extent of public transportation. It makes public transportation more flexible. Like you said, I'm also always late. So making that metro or that tram with an e-scooter rather than running is something that really helps, I think, for many people. But it also, especially in the outer city, makes those public transportation hubs more close to people. And Oslo is hilly, so that also helps for many people. Yeah.
But in the tender now, there was actually.
We kindly invite you to come over to the right stage area as we start with the fire.
There was in the tender. There was scoring. You scored the different operators on how well they connected with transit. Do you want to say a bit about that in terms of what you can say, of course?
Yeah, like we wanted them, the operators, to explain us how can you connect with the public transportation, and I can't say much how we score, but like that was
can
something
say the
we scored very
scoring
high. We scored very high on that category.
Was it 20 or 30% of the score?
30, I think.
30, yeah. And basically it was like which area you operated in, and then
Yeah. So
yeah. Do you want to say?
we wanted to show that how can you serve all of Oslo. That was the main option goal.
Yeah.
That's scoring that higher. And
And also connect with other modes.
yes,
Yeah.
as well.
Perfect. Do you guys want to comment or on what do you guys think about putting mobility in the tender?
That was also part of one of the criteria that we organized the competition on, like integration in transport system or something like that. So it sounds great, but actually the weight of the criteria was too low to be actually really significant.
Okay.
And we organized the tender in a way that we asked the question: what are your proposals? What would you want to do to integrate better in transport system? And we had interesting replies. Like we didn't say what they had to do. They had some proposals, and of course, integration of Floya mass app, the regional mass app, was one of the proposals. But yeah, next time we'll give more weight to that criteria, I think.
Sounds wise. I would love to hear you too, Teddy, but I'm afraid we're at time. So let's just give these panelists a round of applause.